And welcome back. We are going to go real quick and do a quick example of using a multi-way if statement to branch out with if and else if. So I went ahead and created a very simple program. I had just created three simple variables, x, y, and z, and I set to 1, -1, and 0 respectively. Now, what do we want to do with these variables? Well, let's just say for our purposes, we just want to test them, right? And what do we want to test? Well, we want to, let's say, have them do a certain action. And this is where conditionals are really going to come in, rather than just saying, oh, is it positive, is it negative? All right, great, but what do we want them to do? So we want certain actions to happen based upon the value. So if we think about this with our if statements here, if we say, for example, we want our value to have a certain representation, we can do that. So for example, if we say if x is less than y. All right, what does this mean? Well, it means what we could say easily say system.out.println x is less than y. All right, a very simple explanation, and it works. Obviously we can branch this out as we've seen. We can do other things like else. We can just easily add this in here with our curly brackets and just say system.out.println. And we could just say x is not less than y. Again, very simple. But we, again, want certain action to happen based upon a value. So let's say, for example, we get user input. And so I'm just going to create a quick int num equals kb.nextInt. And let's just put a prompt here so we know what we want, system.out.println. Enter an integer, and when we have this number here, we can start, of course, doing more testing here. So for example, maybe if we have a certain number react a certain way, we can do different operations. So for example, let's just say if num is less than, let's say, x, we can say something like num is equal to num plus x. Again, very simple thing, and then we could just print out num. All right, so again, this is where conditionals come in very handy. But again, when we looked at with multi-way ones, this is where we start getting into having multiple conditions get involved here. So let's just say we want to, I'm going to bring in actually this if else here that I started previously, paste in, and let's just go ahead and add in the else if here, and I can actually start adding in multiple different things. So for example, if I want to say x plus y, and I want to see if that is less than z, all right, and do my curly brackets, perfect. Now the one thing I do have to be careful about is making sure that when I do these that I don't override what is being compared here. So even though I could do this and it should give me the right output, whenever I start doing an operation like this inside the parentheses, I'm going to make sure I do more parentheses around that just to make sure that I know it's going to add these first and not try to do the comparison and then add. It shouldn't, because comparisons have a different precedence than addition. So it should follow the right order that we want, but it's just a good habit to kind of do that, because if you parenthesize this, it's explicitly telling Java, hey, do this first. So if we say x plus y is less than z, we can just say something simple like, since we know up here x is 1, y is 0, we can say that the sum is not, or the sum is less than 0. All right, and now it should trigger here, because we have x is not less than y. So let's just go ahead and run this real quick. And we get x is not less than y. It's waiting for our integer, so I'm just going to go ahead and type 1 in. Let's go ahead and just put 5. And we get, again, x is not less than y. Now notice at any point we did not change what the value of x is, so that wouldn't affect this comparison statement, because it's the exact same as what we have up here. And again, this is a very simple example, but you can apply this to anything. We could, of course, add more operations in here, just like we had here. So we had a numerical operation. We can, of course, add additional print line statements in here. So we can have more than one print line. So for example, if I wanted to maybe print out, instead of num here, I maybe want to print out as well system.out.println num plus x, just to see what that new value is. And so I can put 5 in again. All right, we get x is not less than y. And now notice it did not print this one because in here it did not hit this statement here. Or is num less than x? No, it's not. So it never prints this one. But if I were to change this, and let's put in -5, now you can see we get different values in here. So again, these are going to be very dependent because again, with conditionals, they only execute if they are true. So this first one didn't execute when I put in +5 because again, it didn't happen. Up here, we of course expect this to happen. Well, as x is not less than y because we know, well, if we look, is 1 less than -1? No. And then we come down here, we have the exact same situation. The only difference is that we have this else if that's going to be here. However, it still falls into this else because this else if is not true. In fact, even if I go here and let's just check this, change this just to, let's for example say y is less than z. And so let's just go ahead and make that to y is less than 0 here. All right. Or I can just make that z. All right. Now, if we look at this one, this is true. All right. -1 is less than 0, which means we should expect this last output to change. So when I run this again, put my 5 in here, or we could do -5 just so we get the other output, we can now get y is less than z. So even though these conditions could both trigger based upon what we have for our variables up here, it's only going to print out the one value that is actually true. And then as soon as it does that, because there's nothing else that says continue, we're going to exit out of this if statement. So this whole thing kind of operates as one big block. And as soon as it finds a true thing, it's going to do it. That'll come to the else, do that, and then exit out. If you don't have an else, as we saw up here, it completely skips over that block of code.